Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You've brought us quite a stack of sources today, a collection of ancient wisdom that, well, it promises a kind of ultimate shortcut to being well-informed about true happiness.
It does. Our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack what these texts identify as the single most beneficial quality a person can cultivate.
And it's a spiritual paradox, isn't it? Because in our world, we're relentlessly pursuing power, status, material security.
Right. And the sources tell us that the deepest, most stable form of wealth is completely internal. It's contentment.
Exactly. And we know you, the learner. You're looking for knowledge that isn't just, intellectual. You want something actionable, something that can fundamentally shift your perspective. You've probably noticed that we spend so much of our energy chasing these external markers of success, the next promotion, the bigger vacation, the newest phone, all based on this belief that fulfillment is somewhere out there.
But the core truth, the shocking kind of economic evaluation of the mind presented in these texts, it just completely reverses that whole search.
So what's the headline? The distilled nugget.
It's incredibly direct. I do not see a single thing that is so very harmful as lack of contentment. Lack of contentment is very harmful. And right on the other side of the coin, I do not see a single thing that is so very beneficial as contentment. Contentment is very beneficial.
And this is so much more than just a nice, a moral platitude. This is a declaration of what you could call spiritual economics.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
We're being told that contentment yields a greater return on investment than any physical effort or, financial speculation. So our deep dive today, it's structured to follow this vital quality step by step.
We're going to trace its power, starting with its function as, well, the greatest wealth, showing exactly why it dwarfs any kind of material riches.
And then?
Then we'll analyze its function as the direct antidote to craving and suffering. And finally, and this is where it gets a bit more technical, we will explore its absolute necessity as the foundation for achieving the highest states of meditative immersion.
You mean samādhi and jhana?
The very same. The states that lead toward ultimate freedom, Nibbāna.
So the ultimate question you've tasked us with is understanding the mechanism. Why does this state of mind contentment yield better, more lasting, and more profound results than any form of worldly achievement? Let's unpack that spiritual calculus right now.
Okay, so when the texts establish contentment as the foundation for lasting welfare and happiness, they don't do it by, ignoring worldly wealth.
Yes.
They do it by acknowledging its absolute pinnacle and then just dismissing it as trivial. They understood that to really make the point stick, they had to use the most overwhelming analogies for power and luxury they could possibly think of.
That contrast is so important because if you just compare contentment to, say, small everyday anxieties, it doesn't really seem like the ultimate goal.
Exactly.
But if you compare it to literally ruling the world, then suddenly that internal peace looks, it's valued far, far higher.
Precisely. And let's look at the benchmarks they set. First, they acknowledge the power of ethical worldly effort. There's this story about Magga, a student who sought out wealth in a principled way, making sure his riches were legitimate.
And he was generous.
Very generous. He gave to one person, then 50, then 100 people. And the text confirms this act of giving, this sacrifice. It accrues much merit. So it's acknowledged as a good, moral, and beneficial thing, but in a worldly sense.
So that's our first benchmark. Merit earned through legitimate effort and generous action. But then, to set the bar just impossibly high, they bring in this legendary figure.
The wheel-turning monarch, King Masayuda-sana.
And this isn't just some rich king.
Oh, not at all. This is a mythological figure whose wealth represents the absolute zenith of human capability and luxury. It's a spectacular exercise in, descriptive opulence.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. What are these 7 treasures they talk about?
Well, first there's the jewel treasure. This was a massive 8-faceted beryl gem, naturally lustrous, so transparent that when the king took it out, its light, its radiance spread across the entire land for about 3 miles.
3 miles.
A league, yeah. Imagine the sheer, raw, overwhelming visibility and material power that one single object represented. It's like a lighthouse of wealth.
And the power wasn't just decorative, was it? It was also logistical.
Completely. He possessed the horse treasure, a magical steed capable of traversing the entire continent, the whole land surrounded by ocean, and yet it could return to the capital in time for the king's breakfast.
So it's not a private jet.
Yeah.
It's instantaneous, unlimited command over the whole world.
That's the idea. If he needed something, he had it immediately, and his domain itself was this vision of perfection. King Mahasudassana ruled over 16 great countries, and his palace grounds had these extravagant, purpose-built lotus ponds.
That's where it gets really detailed.
Incredibly detailed. They were masterpieces of engineering and luxury, lined with tiles of 4 pure elements: gold, silver, beryl, and crystal. The balustrades, the stairs going down into the water, all crafted from these 4 materials. This detail, the 4-colored lotuses, the precious tile work, it shows a level of dedicated, boundless resources that no one, not even today, could ever achieve.
So we have generosity earning great merit on one hand, and on the other, we have one man holding absolute political, logistical, and material control over the known world. That is the highest point of worldly joy.
It is.
So what's the spiritual verdict on that pinnacle of achievement?
The critique is immediate and absolute. The sources tell us that even ruling over those 16 great countries, possessing all 7 of those legendary treasures, wouldn't be worth a 16th part of the Sabbath with its 8 factors.
60th part.
Not even. And it goes further, saying that human kingship is a poor thing compared to the happiness of the gods.
Okay, let's stop right there, because that is the central thesis of this whole deep dive. What are those 8 factors of the Sabbath or the Uposatha that are deemed so incredibly valuable that they just crush the value of world domination?
They're fundamentally ethical practices of purification. It's a concerted effort to maintain moral and physical restraint for a designated period.
Like what?
Okay, so the 8 are abstaining from killing living creatures, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from all sexual activity, and from false speech.
So the basic moral precepts.
The core ones, yes.
Okay.
Then abstaining from intoxicants which lead to heedlessness, abstaining from eating afternoon, abstaining from dancing, singing, music, and spectacles, and from wearing garlands, perfumes, and beauty treatments.
And the last one.
And finally, abstaining from using high or luxurious seats and beds.
Wow. That is an intense commitment to simplicity and restraint.
It is. But the point isn't the asceticism for its own sake. It's the internal result of that self-restraint. If you perfectly maintain those 8 factors, your mind gets clear of the immediate worries and regrets that usually just plague us.
How so?
Well, by refraining from killing or stealing, you eliminate the mental burden of fear, guilt, enmity. This internal peace, born of contentment with just a little, and moral purity. It creates a joy and a certainty that's considered fundamentally more valuable than all the external anxious splendor of a king.
So ethical purification, which is born of contentment, immediately yields lasting welfare. Let's talk about that immediate benefit. You mentioned that a content person refrains from misconduct, which removes 5 specific anxieties.
Yes, that's where the practical, non-regrettable results really show up. If an individual is content, meaning they aren't overcome by greed, they naturally refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and encouraging others to do those things.
And when they stop those actions,
They also quell the 5 fears and enmities. The fear of being punished by the law, the fear of losing their reputation, the fear of loss, the fear of death, and the enmity that's just caused by harming other people.
so contentment eliminates the internal anxiety that drives those harmful acts, and at the same time, it removes the external fears that result from those acts. It's like a moral shield.
It creates an unsullied certainty. By avoiding these actions, the content individual knows without doubt or regret that they've secured a good destination in the next life, if there is one. The texts describe this as developing the certainty of a stream enterer, someone who is now bound for awakening.
Wow.
So contentment isn't just about feeling good now. It is the ultimate preemptive moral defense that secures irreversible spiritual progress.
Which means the true purpose of the practice, the Dhamma,
Yeah.
that contentment supports. It leads solely to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. No emerald pond or magic horse can buy you those outcomes. Contentment is the necessary step toward the wealth that actually lasts.
And that builds directly into its psychological function. Moving on from contentment as a moral foundation, we see it as the direct antidote to craving, which is the engine of all suffering.
Right. Craving, the texts teach, is what leads to continued existence, future lives, and is always mixed up with relishing and greed.
Exactly. And we often talk about the 3 main types of craving.
The craving for sensual pleasures, the craving to continue existence to be, and the craving to end existence to not be. This cycle feels massive, unstoppable.
It feels unstoppable because it's fueled by this systemic chain of causality. And contentment is what allows us to step out of that mechanism. The sources detail a very precise fuel chain of misconduct.
Okay, walk us through it.
We can start with the biggest conceptual hurdle. Suffering and rebirth are ultimately fueled by ignorance.
Okay, and what keeps that ignorance going? What's its fuel?
Ignorance, in turn, is perpetually fueled by the 5 hindrances.
Sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and regret, and skeptical doubt.
The very ones. These are the immediate mental pollutants that prevent concentration and clarity.
And the chain just keeps spiraling downward from there.
It does. The 5 hindrances are fueled by the 3 kinds of misconduct, bad actions, expressed through body, speech, and mind. And this misconduct is, in the final analysis, fueled by a lack of sense restraint.
And that's the link.
That is exactly where contentment steps in to break the cycle.
Let's make this causality chain really tangible for you, the learner. Could you walk us through a modern example of how the lack of contentment spirals down to ignorance?
Of course. Let's take the common experience of checking your phone. The initial thought, I should check my feed, is often rooted in a mild lack of contentment with the present moment. A feeling of missing out, maybe, or just low-level boredom.
So because of that lack of contentment, we apply a lack of sense restraint. We don't guard the mind door against the temptation of that stimulation.
Exactly, we don't. So we pick up the phone.
And we start scrolling.
And picking up the phone and dwelling excessively on that feed becomes misconduct of the mind. Maybe it generates covetousness or a subtle ill will toward other people's apparent successes.
And that feeds directly into the 5 hindrances.
Yes, specifically sensual desire for new information or restlessness if the feed isn't loading fast enough. These hindrances churn the mind. They prevent concentration. Yeah. And if we spend years living like this, our understanding of reality just stays shallow. That is ignorance.
And that ignorance fuels the overarching craving for a continued, stimulated existence.
It's a perfect spiral.
So contentment, then, is the act of just being satisfied with the current reality.
Yeah.
And it breaks the chain at that very first step of a lack of restraint.
It is the active practice of not clinging, of not approving. The text singles out the precise snare here. Relishing. Relishing is that crucial moment where we move from simple sensory perception, seeing, hearing, tasting, to active attachment.
How does the text define relishing specifically?
When a practitioner approves, welcomes, and clings to likable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, or ideas, this gives rise to relishing. And relishing is explicitly named unequivocally as the origin of suffering.
Wow.
So contentment is the mental state that says, I perceive this pleasant thing, but I neither approve nor cling. It's the instant cessation of relishing.
That's a really powerful distinction.
Yeah.
It means you don't have to eliminate the sensory experience itself.
Not at all.
You just have to eliminate the mental process of seizing it.
The great release comes from severing that relishing. Whoever prevails over this wretched craving, which is described as so hard to get over in the world, they see their sorrows fall away like a drop from a lotus leaf.
That's a beautiful metaphor. It perfectly captures that sudden, clean, and complete end of suffering once the attachment is gone.
It does.
And this leads us to the culmination of the Noble Eightfold Path, the ultimate removal of greed, hate, and delusion. And this is achieved through understanding and giving up desire for the 5 aggregates.
Right, the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness. They're everything we cling to as self. The realization required is that these are impermanent, they're suffering, they're perishable, and contentment provides the mental clarity you need to sustain that realization.
But the sources warn that simply knowing they're impermanent isn't enough.
Right.
We have to fully give up the desire.
Absolutely. If the mind isn't rid of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for these aggregates, the mind just stays stuck. It gets caught in all these philosophical views about whether the self exists after death or doesn't exist or is both or neither. The attachment blinds us.
So contentment helps us see clearly.
It allows us to view the aggregates objectively, recognizing the inherent drawback that suffering arises from their impermanence. When we stop demanding permanence and fulfillment from things that are inherently unstable, we achieve the escape, the active removal and giving up of desire and greed. Contentment stabilizes the mind in the face of impermanence.
So contentment really is the pivot point. It stops the cycle of craving, and at the same time, it provides the mental freedom to investigate reality, the aggregates, without the distortion of desire. And that stability, that must be absolutely essential for the next stage, deep meditation.
That is the perfect transition. Contentment shifts from being a moral safeguard to a necessary condition for advanced mind training. It is the precondition for achieving samādhi, or deep meditative immersion.
Okay, so why is samādhi so vital to the ultimate goal?
Because the texts are crystal clear. A mendicant who has immersion truly understands. Immersion grants the deep, penetrating insight required to see things as they truly are, beyond just conceptual understanding.
But you can't just force immersion to happen.
You can't. It relies fundamentally on seclusion, fading away, and cessation. If you lack contentment, your mind is perpetually attached to input, which prevents the necessary seclusion.
So let's talk about the practical application of contentment in daily life that creates this seclusion. You're talking about sense restraint. This is the door to that unsullied bliss inside themselves.
Sense restraint is how contentment is practiced, moment to moment. The mendicant commits to observing the six sense faculties, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, but does not get caught up in the features and details of the objects they encounter.
Okay, so if I see a beautiful car, the object, I shouldn't start dwelling on its speed, its color, or its price tag, the features and details.
Precisely.
Because that dwelling is where discontent and craving really begin.
That's it. If they allow their mind to seize on those features and details, it leads to this overwhelming surge of bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure. By restraining the senses, by protecting the faculties from getting caught up in what's likable or rousing, they prevent that internal surge.
And the immediate reward.
That unsullied bliss inside themselves. It's an internal pleasure that's generated by the sheer absence of mental stress. And it's far, far more reliable than anything you can get from the outside world.
And that unsullied bliss provides the stability needed for the mind to unify and enter the higher mind training of the jhanas.
Yes, the absorptions that represent right immersion.
So let's trace this progression through the 4 primary absorptions. We should show exactly where contentment is required at each stage.
The path of jhana is really a methodical process of stilling the coarse mental and physical activities, and it's all enabled by that initial contentment-born seclusion.
Okay, so the first absorption, first jhana. What are the components here, and how does contentment set the stage?
The first jhana is defined by having rapture, kiri, and bliss, sukha, that are born specifically of seclusion. It still requires effort. The mind must be placed, vitakka, and kept connected, vitara, to the object of meditation.
And contentment is the prerequisite.
It's the necessary prerequisite because it has already subdued the 5 hindrances. If you were still restless or experiencing sensual desire or struggling with ill will, you could never achieve the initial seclusion required to keep the mind connected, even for a moment.
So contentment is like the mental environment cleanup crew. It clears out all the trash so the mind can actually focus its energy.
That's an excellent analogy. And once the mind is placed, the immersion deepens. This leads to the second absorption, second jhana.
What happens here?
Here, the placing and connecting of the mind, that initial effort, are stilled. The rapture and bliss are now born specifically of immersion, samādhi. It's characterized by internal clarity and the mind being at one. This joy is much finer, much more internal than the rapture of the first jhana.
I can see how contentment is required here too, but in a more refined way.
Yeah.
You have to be content enough with the internal clarity to let go of the need for that gross intellectual engagement, the placing and connecting.
Precisely. You stop needing to work the mind, you just rest in the result of the work. And the refinement continues into the third absorption, third jhana. Here, the practitioner gives up the hyperjoy of rapture. Gives it up. They meditate with equanimity, mindful and aware, personally experiencing the bliss of which the noble ones declare, equanimous and mindful, one meditates in bliss.
Okay, but giving up rapture sounds so counterintuitive to the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Why is letting go of the joy itself necessary?
Because even spiritual rapture is an activity. It's a conditioned phenomenon. If you cling to the ecstasy, you're still bound by craving, in this case, craving for spiritual pleasure.
I see.
True contentment allows the mind to fade away from even the most sublime emotional highs, leaving behind a stable, deep bliss paired with perfect equanimity. This is the ultimate test of detachment.
And this progression leads to the final stage of mind training in this system, the fourth absorption, fourth jhana.
In the fourth jhana, the practitioner gives up both pleasure and pain. They end all former happiness and sadness. The mind rests in pure equanimity and mindfulness without pleasure or pain.
And what's the critical part here?
Critically, the texts state that in this state, the physical process is stilled. The mind has become so content and so unified that even the most subtle physical activities related to sensation and emotion have ceased. This highly purified, unshakable state is the ultimate foundation needed for penetrating insight and ultimate freedom.
That is profound. The process of immersion, which is built on seclusion, is essentially a progressive exercise in sophisticated contentment.
It is.
It's the ability to detach from conditioned phenomena, including the bliss that's generated by the practice itself.
And it proves that contentment isn't apathy, it's the perfection of focus. If the mind in the first jhana still has rapture and bliss, the practitioner has to remain not stuck internally. They have to be content with the progress without becoming attached to the pleasurable state itself. This constant vigilance of letting go is the pathway that slopes and inclines toward extinguishment.
This brings us to the really practical dimension. If contentment is this vital vehicle for moral conduct and meditative achievement, where does it sit structurally? You mentioned earlier that it is not one of the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path.
That is a critical clarification for you, the learner. Contentment, or santuṭṭhi, it's not a structural factor. It's a supporting quality, a prerequisite state of mind that allows the 8 factors to function flawlessly.
So the Noble Eightfold Path is the practice itself.
It's the practical application that leads directly to the cessation of feeling and suffering. Contentment provides the fuel for the journey.
So how do we actively cultivate this state of mind that is so very beneficial in the context of daily life? Not just when we're sitting in deep absorption, we need tangible steps.
Well, the sources insist that contentment has to be actively supported by rational application of mind. Irrational application of mind dwelling on fear, focusing on the flaws of others, or allowing attachment to grow is highly harmful.
And rational application.
Rational application of mind is highly beneficial because it directs the mind toward principles of impermanence, non-self, and the benefits of renunciation.
Can you use a concrete example? Rational application of mind in the context of a modern frustration, maybe.
Certainly. Let's say you're stuck in traffic, a very common source of discontent. The irrational application of mind says, "This is unfair, I hate being late, I deserve to be moving faster."
Right.
This application just fuels restlessness and ill will. It creates mental suffering.
And the rational application.
The rational application of mind steps back and recognizes. This traffic is a conditioned phenomenon, born of many causes. It is impermanent. Getting upset will not speed up the process, but it will certainly increase my suffering. I'll use this time for mindfulness. It's the active choice to embrace contentment with the present reality.
That makes contentment sound much more like a mental habit, not just a passive feeling.
It absolutely is an active practice, and the primary external practice supporting this is seclusion and renunciation. We have that famous instruction to live alone like a horned rhino or frequent remote lodgings.
And that's not always a literal instruction to become a hermit.
Not always, no. It's a psychological instruction to establish mental space.
Why is this physical or mental seclusion so critical for contentment?
It acts as preventative medicine against the peril for the spiritual practitioner. The practitioner must actively ensure they don't enjoy infatuation, fall into greed, and return to indulgence when opportunities arise. When we're constantly bombarded by desirable sights and sounds, the very things that trigger relishing, maintaining contentment is exponentially harder. Seclusion reduces the opportunities for a lack of sense restraint to take root. You're simplifying the input stream to simplify the mind.
Beyond seclusion, the sources provide an amazing, targeted emotional antidote to discontent, the practice of the 4 immeasurables.
Yes, the boundless states of love, metta, compassion, karu, rejoicing mudita, and equanimity, upik.
And while all 4 are powerful, the source material specifically highlights one of them.
It does. It says that the development of the heart's release by rejoicing is the designated escape from discontent.
That is a powerful and very direct instruction. So if you, the learner, are feeling discontent, you should immediately cultivate rejoicing. How does that work in practice?
Well, discontent is often rooted in envy, comparison, or dissatisfaction with your own lot. Rejoicing, or sympathetic joy, is the exact opposite, finding genuine happiness in the success, wealth, or good fortune of others.
So if you're struggling with a lack of contentment about your possessions,
you focus intensely on the happiness and merit of a friend who just achieved something great. It immediately breaks the self-centered loop of dissatisfaction. It trains the mind to find pleasure in reality, regardless of whether that reality directly benefits you.
It sounds like spiritual aikido, using the energy of dissatisfaction and redirecting it into something beneficial for both yourself and others. And the sources also highlight the immense benefits of developing love, metta.
The benefits are listed as 11-fold. When love is cultivated, The practitioner expects to sleep at ease, wake happily, have pleasant dreams, be protected by deities, and significantly have the mind quickly enter immersion.
So all of the immeasurables support samadhi.
They do. Because they remove the emotional poisons like greed and ill will, they naturally support the mental unity required for deep samadhi.
Finally, we have to look at the most direct meditative practice for achieving immersion and profound contentment. Mindfulness of breathing.
Yes, anapanasati. It's universally described as very fruitful and beneficial. The instruction is to sit down, cross-legged, set the body straight, and establish mindfulness. We're instructed to practice breathing in and out, specifically observing the act of letting go.
So the breath itself becomes the mechanism for applying contentment and detachment.
Exactly. The ultimate goal of this practice is to perceive, experience, and ultimately still the physical processes. By focusing on the breath, one stills the mental processes internally, unifies the mind, and immerses it in samadhi.
The mind becomes content just by observing.
Simply by observing the natural rhythm of the body without trying to manipulate it. When the practitioner practices letting go with the breath, letting go of control, letting go of the need for the breath to be different, longer, or deeper, they fulfill the conditions for deep immersion.
So contentment is thus the recognition that every conditioned phenomena, from the breath to the deepest meditative bliss, is impermanent and therefore not self.
That realization is the final triumph. When the practitioner realizes, this is not mine, I am not this is not myself, when looking at form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness. They give up sorrow and lamentation. This profound contentment leads to a state where one lives happily and is said to be quenched in that respect. That quenching is the freedom from the struggle to be anything other than what is.
So we've traced the full arc of contentment today. It is not merely a soft virtue or some kind of passive acceptance. It's a vital and active condition for the entire spiritual structure that you tasked us to explore.
It really functions on 3 levels. First, it's the initial foundation of moral conduct, providing immediate welfare and happiness by just eliminating the fears, boredom, misconduct.
Right.
Second, it eliminates the primary fuel source craving and relishing that perpetuates suffering and leads to future lives.
And most powerfully, it serves as the crucial launchpad for the highest mind training. It unlocks the mind's capacity for profound samadhi and the jhanas, allowing the practitioner to realize that incomparable wealth of internal peace.
And the intricate nature of all these teachings, from the rigorous requirements of the Eightfold Path to the lofty, blissful states of the jhanas, they're all directed toward achieving one sublime, simple state of peace.
Contentment is the realization that we don't need to chase the overwhelming wealth of King Mahasudassana or endure the pain of craving for things that are just going to vanish anyway.
Exactly.
Contentment, therefore, is not the absence of effort, but the perfection of focus. The ultimate goal, extinguishment, Nibbāna, is achieved when the mind perceives. This is peaceful. This is sublime. That is the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, extinguishment.
True contentment is the recognition of this profound, unshakable peace, an experience that surpasses any known wealth, whether human or divine.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to carry forward. We saw that the mind, once it's trained through contentment, can enter a state of immersion so profound that it perceives this is peaceful, this is sublime, yet it still remains unattached to the rapture and bliss of that very state. So if the enlightened mind is letting go of a joy that is higher than any worldly pleasure, how much effort are you currently expending chasing happiness that is less valuable than the joy you are already being asked to detach from? What attachments are you ready to rationally apply your mind toward letting go of right now to achieve that higher, more peaceful state?
That is the Daily Deep Dive. Thank you for joining us as we unpack this powerful knowledge.
We'll be here when you're ready for the next one.